Hi guys, welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. I am going to be looking at an interesting topic called what is the purpose of an M&E plan. If you're here for the very first time, please do well to subscribe to this channel. There's something I wanted to talk about. In the link description below, we have a PayPal feature in case you want to donate because you really appreciate the work we do, and also to help us further our cause. We'll be happy to receive, even if it's a $1 through our PayPal account. So who am I? I am Coach Alexander. I've been in this field for 10 years. I'm seeing myself actually going 20 years, probably even 30 years. The sky is the limit, but M&D just keeps on improving, and I'm so glad to be in this profession. I have been sharing this knowledge with different people, and I want you to be a part of it. So, which is why we have this coaching program, but I have to tell you the truth that the coaching program already started. The window is fast closing. February will be the deadline for late registration. So in case you still want to give it a shot, you can still register with me for the 6-month coaching program. These are the free ebooks. I've talked about it. We're going to be updating these books to the 2021 version, hopefully this year. If we can't make it, it may be next year. But please download these ebooks. They are totally free. And there's this course, how to set up a monitoring and evaluation system step by step. Enroll in this course, guys. Okay, so as usual, this is a long video. Take advantage of the timestamps in order for you to gain the maximum experience that you really deserve. And if you want to skip certain parts of this video, you can do well easily using the timestamps. Okay, so I've talked about a lot on this channel what an M&E plan is. Let's face it, I've been talking about it for a lot of times on this channel. So in case you haven't seen those videos, please do well to look at those videos on this channel. But I want to tackle one question. I think this is where we get it all wrong. When should an M&E plan be developed? I have to tell you guys that I've seen a lot of times that when the project has already started running, people want to set up the M&E system, which includes setting up the M&E plan and the framework. But I have to be honest with you, this is not a very good way of doing things. And this is where sometimes we run into a bit of some confusion, because this component at planning stage wasn't given the attention it deserves. You see, when projects are being designed, there's a certain period whereby, okay, they've designed it, they've approved it, and then they start the implementation. So you'll find that at the implementation, that is when people are now saying, let's start the M&E plan, let's develop the M&E plan. But actually, it should be done when the project is actually being designed, because now after it has been after the project is being implemented, that's when people now especially management, they'll look at it as an additional cost to actually develop an M&E system, because it wasn't there at the initial planning phase. I'm sure you get the point. So it should be done just at inception. It should be done just at inception, at the design stage. So the purpose of an M&E plan, I try to think about the different purposes that could be there. But at this point, I only came with 5 very important purposes of why you should have an M&E plan. All right. One thing I need to tell you guys is that M&E plans, even just monitoring and evaluation itself, it's underrated. And that is why you find that if you have a project officer in your organization, that project officer will also be doing monitoring and evaluation. But here is the interesting thing. That person will also be doing other functions. So the project officer will not really have the time to build a system that can work and sustain itself. So now, I think this is where I get the questions a lot of times. Where does the M&D plan fit in? The highest level, the highest level of the M&E, the host infrastructure of the monitoring and evaluation in an organization, it starts from here. It starts at the highest level, which is the system. So when we talk of the M&D system, we are really talking about everything that is there, the policies, the guidelines, the plans, everything that is there, including, so when we say the plans, we're also talking about the M&D plan itself. So it fits into the system up there. So now the M&D plan is actually part of this system. It's seated there. So that M&D plan is critical to everything that is done in the organization. So in the plan itself, you have now the framework. So sometimes there is this confusion. People tend to interchange the two. But personally, I feel these are two separate things, two separate entities. I've read different M&D frameworks. There are some M&D frameworks that they just give you the matrix and it ends there. There are other M&D frameworks where they give you an encyclopedia of a book and they call that an M&D framework. Okay, so there are some like that. But what I've noticed, what people are usually scared to include in whichever they do, whether it's the plan or the framework, they don't want to include the budget, which is very sad because I feel that the budget is actually where the power comes from to implement this system. We need, and this is my appeal to everybody who is watching this video, we need to have a financial budget on its own, dedicated to sustaining this M&D system. Because without that, we will just be working on assumptions and things will be unclear. Because if, for instance, I'm working for your organization, I want to embark on an M&D activity, which is very relevant, which is actually part of the work plan, why should anyone get cold feet to let me go and do those activities? So usually the cold feet comes from the fact that there isn't any money. You see, because we didn't dedicate that money at the very beginning. So my appeal to you, everyone around the world, is make sure that the M&D plan has a budget, okay? Okay, so what is the first reason why we need an M&D plan? It gives you the purpose. You know, it's funny, eh? Some of us don't know why we are actually doing what we do. There must be a purpose here fulfilling. You go for work every day. What is your purpose? Why are you going for work every day? Of course, you want to earn an income, but there must be something bigger than that. Because there's obviously going to come a time when we are all going to retire from work. So your purpose is that when you work, ultimately one day you're going to retire, have a home, and live a secure life. So that is what the M&D plan does. In monitoring and evaluation, people tend to sometimes think of it of, this is just a reporting system. You know, M&E is not a reporting system, but it's more than that. It's all about learning and improvement. I always look at the way, for those of you who drive BMW vehicles, 10, 20 years ago, the BMW vehicle was different. In 2020, it's different. I saw a Mercedes Benz today. On the YouTube channel, I watched a YouTube video of a Mercedes Benz that can park itself. That kind of car couldn't do that 20, 30 years ago. It couldn't because they didn't know the technology, but through learning and improvement, they developed that technology. So the M&D plan is more than what meets the eye. It's not a reporting system. It's not just there to report. It's there for learning and continuous improvement, and also feedback. I talked about this when I showed you that image. The thing is that in many of the documents I've read, I really don't see the budget component coming out clearly. Ladies and gentlemen, we really need to commit to making sure this M&E actually is sustained. And the only way you can do that is by having a plan that is actually promising not just your organization, but different stakeholders that you have committed to further the M&E interventions. And one of the ways you do that is by committing one, financial resources, two, human resource and time. Let me tell you one thing. If you're going to, if you go and make an application to one of the donors, they would really want to see that you have taken monitoring and evaluation seriously. But, and this is a huge but, donors don't want you to, if you make a proposal on activities, you should make sure that that money you've proposed on how you're going to use it, it should be used for the intended purpose. So now the thing is that during the implementation, don't tell the donor that we've run out of M&E money, so let us get money from these other interventions. They're going to refuse. So from the very onset, let them know that you've committed, that you need money on this component of monitoring and evaluation to make it work. So that even when you're generating reports to them, they understand, okay, we've really invested in a system and we're getting good quality reports. If they don't want to invest in M&D, then why should they expect good quality reports? So this is something you need to highlight to them. But even as an organization, try to make sure you can sustain this yourself. Now, one of the things I talked about is the issue of continuous learning and improvement. The learning cycle is a very interesting one because when do you actually learn? Maybe that's the question I should ask you. Friends, when do you actually learn? It is when you make mistakes. I think that's how it is most of the time. And that is why I want to also appeal to donors. If, for instance, an evaluation report comes out and there are noticeable weaknesses in the implementation, please let us give the organization a chance to improve, because that is what it's all about. That's why we have these evaluations. The evaluations are not audits, they are not really there to fault find. No, the evaluations are there to help us improve, to evolve. I gave the example of the Mercedes Benz. I was just amazed when, if you want, you can go on the internet, look for a link or a video that talks about a Mercedes Benz that can park by itself. No driver, just you clicking a button, it's going to park itself. Now, how do they do that? I mean, how were the Germans able to come up with that technology? They had to invest a lot in the learning. And that's the beauty of it. You learn from your mistakes. It's trial and error. Don't try to be perfect. You know, perfection is it's really a long journey. Of course, you should strive to be perfect, but it's a long journey. Make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. Then you become someone close to perfect. I talked about this cosmetically. The M&D plan is attractive to donors. I've learned this, but you have to realize that this also sometimes is a little bit dependent on which donor you're dealing with. I've noticed that some donors are not really concerned about this that much, but others are. Others are really strict about it. So when we say cosmetically, we are simply saying that you just have to have it, and when you have it, even if you're not following it well, stakeholders feel you're actually doing the right thing, and they're willing to give you a shot. They're willing to give you a chance. So now, what does this mean? If you've already started implementing projects in your organization and you don't have an M&D plan, today start developing one. Today, start drafting it. Just write where you can do it. Even if you don't have M&D personnel in your organization, try to write it yourself, maybe, or you can get me. I can help you write it. But that plan needs to be validated by some external experts somewhere. Okay, so guys, I'm sure you get the point by now. This is also very, very important. As a professional, standard practice is that you need direction. You need something that's going to tell you what you're going to be doing exactly. So as a professional, I wouldn't expect you to not know this really, because there are certain things an M&D officer, coordinator, manager should know. I can't go to an organization, I'm talking with an M&D manager, and I ask him, do you have an M&D plan? He asks me, what is an M&D plan? No, that won't work, because they should be able to know these things. Actually, if you are employed, if you are a newly employed M&D officer, and you enter an organization that doesn't have an M&D plan, that doesn't have a framework and a system, you must begin without even them telling you. You must begin to develop those things. And you tell them that, look, guys, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but this is important. And we need to agree on these things. It will make our work easier. It will make our jobs better. So, guys, I think I have spent a lot of time talking today. This is where I end. I really appreciate your listening ears. If you have any questions, please write to me. I'll be able to answer those questions anytime. At this point, I want to say bye to you. Until we meet again, see you on the other side.